Hi, friends. So I want to introduce to you a good friend of mine, Father Swartz, Father Dan Swartz. He is a priest of the Diocese of Columbus, and he is in the military right now as a chaplain. And I love the image that you give of place and purpose in regards to what you were telling me earlier today about being in defense exercises out in the desert. Can you just briefly tell us about that defense exercise? And what I'd like to do is apply that to Luke 16 and the idea of the steward.
Yeah, so I just got out of a big training exercise with the Marine Corps battalion that I'm with. We were training in 29 Palms, and there was a particular event where the guys had to prepare a defense, 24 hours to prepare. They're working through the night, and every Marine there, since they were as the exercise was going against greater numbers, every Marine had that purpose and a kind of position or plan. So there was something unique purpose that each Marine had to do. They all had a job. No hand was left idle. There was a specific role, but within that role, there was also an overall plan that it played into. And so you had this smaller, just that individual intentionality, but then the greater picture of what they all played into. And it was really cool to see. It was really powerful.
And the whole exercise was successful because every person knew their place, and every person had a plan, and they had a purpose in that plan. And so they were able to defend themselves against a force that was how much greater?
About 3 times larger. So it was a company versus a battalion size element.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's incredible. So how do you see that playing out in Luke 16? I'll remind you that in Luke 16, there's this parable of a steward. And I'll let you go look that up, Luke 16, 1 through 8. But let's just stay with that image of a steward, because what is a steward? In the biblical sense, but even today, what's a steward?
A steward, it goes beyond just the idea of a servant. A steward is someone you leave not just one task to or one problem, but you leave your household, your welfare to. This is someone who speaks with your name, has authority when you're gone, and looks after your estate. So this is, you think of when the king leaves, who takes care of the kingdom? That would be the steward.
Yeah. So following that then, in the gospel parable of Luke 16, the steward doesn't know his place and his purpose, or he's forgotten it.
Yeah.
Right? He's forgotten that he's supposed to be the steward of the gifts of another, of the estate of another, and he's forgotten his own place in all of that, and it's caused him to, now he's going to be displaced because he's forgotten who he is. How can that happen in our own lives? Because aren't we supposed to be stewards?
We are, and even within the Christian tradition or not, there's something that's fulfilling about when we have a place in another person's life in a greater purpose that we seek to fulfill. When something that brings life into our own existence is not our own. Ideas of family, of serving country, of church. And so there's something writ in our DNA by God that when something is handed to us that we don't own, but we still seek it to flourish by our own efforts, whether that be our children, our community, like that builds us up. That builds us up as who we are. And it's especially true in our faith.
So that's a beautiful insight into the state of things in our world and in our church today even, right? And we can see this in our parishes, in our schools, is that when we don't see ourselves as part of the bigger plan and an important part of that, like all of us are essential personnel and we all work together. We've been given a plan, we've been given a purpose, but when we let that plan and purpose go, when we don't believe in it, we don't think it's relevant, when we don't follow that, then it not only ends up hurting us, it hurts other people too.
Or if we can even, I see this a lot, we try to own the plan. Or it's just like, well, you know what? I'm going to do the defense this way. I'm like, well, hang on, can't go lone soldier on that one, because then you don't have the support of that the very community we're supposed to be a part of while doing our role within the plan. So it's almost like turning it against ourselves.
Yeah. And so kind of going back to that analogy, if you would, of just coming out of the desert and being a part of a huge defense exercise with just hundreds and hundreds of soldiers and all kinds of machinery and weapons and stuff. If one person just kind of...
A lot of toys.
Yeah. When one person just went rogue and said, I'm going to be my own soldier, what happens?
What that does is it leaves a gap. And that gap was meant to be filled by that person. That role was supposed to be done by them. They have the expertise. They have the training to do it. And you just set your team up to fail. And you also set yourself up to fail. Like, that role wasn't just, hey, you have a job, go do it. But it was for that person to thrive in what they were doing, to do it effectively. But it was also for that community. Like, hey, we're all moving to the same objective together. This is how we do it on that individual level.
You know, I think that is... really helps us to understand a phrase that's being used today a lot by people just as you just described. I'm spiritual, but I'm not religious.
Oh yeah.
You know, because I know I have a belief in God. I have feelings towards God. I love God, but I'm making my own way, and I'm not religious in the sense that I don't believe in the plan, you know.
Yeah.
I don't believe in the community. I don't think I need religious leaders, a platoon leader. I don't think I need somebody telling me what to do, and I don't need other people. But I mean, when you look at it the way you just described your desert defense exercise, when we live that way, how does that affect everyone? When people are just spiritual but not religious, meaning being a part of a religious community that has an identity, that has a plan, that has a place, and each person has a purpose. How does that even just affect our ability to defend ourselves against a larger enemy?
It diminishes it. I like to tell those people, well, I'm religious, but I'm not spiritual. It just kind of like throw them off a little bit. It's because I see two things in the world right now. There's a great desire to improve humanity. It's everywhere. It's all over the place in different ways. But there's also a kind of rampant individualism where I just want to go it alone. I'm like, you can't have both. If you want to help humanity, there has to be a unifying factor. And there has to be a unifying factor that touches us on the most intimate level of how we relate to each other and to God. And that's religion. It's the two dynamics of the cross. You have my personal relationship with Christ, but then also the horizontal dimension of how I am united to my brothers and sisters. Mm-hmm. So for one to want to create an effect, to have a purpose or meaning, and to be effective in bringing about good, you have to enter into the communal. To say, I'm going to run it alone, but then expect to have a communal effect, it's not going to happen that way. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen. The two go hand in hand.
Absolutely. And you know, sometimes people throw up the excuse, well, I'm not religious because the church is imperfect. Well, yes, the church is imperfect in the sense that there's a human part of the church and there's a divine part of the church. The divine part of the church, of course, is that God has instituted it for a purpose and for a place and he has a plan. But the imperfect part is you and I.
Yeah.
But we're all imperfect. But like you just said, if every person does want to better themselves, then it's better if all of us imperfect people go at it together than we go at it alone, right?
If I'm trying to surmount just the mountain of human imperfection, I'd rather go with a group, because there's parts of that journey of perfecting myself that I don't know. And with like trail guiding, I prefer not to walk a path that I'm not familiar with without someone with me who's like either been in that territory. And I get that, like the church is full of sinners, but that's what she exists for. She's a field hospital, to use the analogy. I mean, C.S. Lewis said once, the problem with Christianity, it's so full of Christians. Like, well, the only argument against Christianity is Christians. It's like, but that's the point. It's full of, it is a divine institution. That was a good distinction to make. Like, it's instituted by God, but it's instituted by God and filled with imperfect human beings, which is honestly is a good testament that of we're doing the right work because we're associating with the right people, which is broken sinners, you and I, that need to walk this path together.
And the very objection that some people throw up is the objection of the religious leaders of Jesus' own day in Luke's gospel, where, what are they? They're angry at God, Jesus, who's associating with sinners, who's having dinner with sinners.
Yeah.
And that's what we're doing as church. We're having dinner with sinners, right? I mean, the divine dinner. We're having the Eucharist. Christ is our substance, our sustenance. But we're all doing it surrounding that divine table as sinners. So even to this day, just like Jesus was criticized for having dinner with sinners, he's still having dinners with sinners, isn't he, in the church?
I think it's interesting that the two elements we've been talking about in regards to human betterment and faith, then also community, Jesus is always going in and out of both of those at the same time. Before he does ministry, he makes a community. And while he's making that community, he's working on ministry of the people in that community. So you can't separate Jesus building a community of entering into relationship with other people, but then also enacting those spiritual needs that people have. Religion and spirituality necessarily go hand in hand from a Christian perspective.
And the role of the steward is so important. Each of us are stewards. Each of us have been given a plan, a part to play. We have a purpose and we have a place. And we do this together as a community. And all of us need that community. And we need to know what our plan, our place, our purpose is in that community, in order not to just be able to defend ourselves against an enemy that's greater than us.
Yeah.
The enemy of God, our enemy, but also because we're supposed to go out into all the world and make disciples of Jesus Christ, also so that we can be on the offense also.
It's an interesting thing in the church that generally our enemies, we end up either converting or baptizing them. Just look at Rome. It's like when we see these insurmountable odds, when we bind together in the community that Christ creates in his church, it actually becomes advantage for us even to grow in our faith, because then we thrive off of the challenge, just as with the Marines, to see this training exercise. It's not just they could practice their skills, that stewardship they were given, but then they begin to realize, like, we are very strong together. We can be very dangerous and effective and good at what we do when all of these wheels and cogs are linked together and turning. It's very powerful.
I love that. As a Christian church, we can be strong together, and we can be dangerous and effective. Dangerous to this world. That's what we've stopped being, is dangerous to this world, right? Right? And I love that you're bringing in history, that the way that we grew as an institution, as a community, as a church, is that we engaged our enemies, right? And so we often say this, negative things, all kinds of negative things about the world, and we bemoan the state of the world as it is, but then we're not engaging the world. We're not going out like Christians across the generations. But when we do, then what happens? We convert the barbarians. We converted the Goths and the Visigoths and the Vandals and we converted the Franks, and we converted the Anglos, and we converted the Saxons. We went to all
and the Picts.
Yeah, I mean, come on. I mean, we went to all of these nations that were our enemies, and we didn't reject them. We brought them to Christ, but we did it as a united front. And that's what we have to do again. But it starts with remembering that we are stewards, right?
Yep. It's a movement of the heart to realize that these are moments and times given to us, that there's a plan here, and there's also an intentionality with our purpose at this time. So when people, in conversations, people like to bring up all kinds of negative press about the Marine Corps to me. Like, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? Because I think it's so easy in broken human nature to gravitate towards the negative. And I just say, well, I have great job security. But it's true. We're broken people. We live in a broken world. But that's exactly where the Christian is significant. That's exactly where the Christian has a job. So we're going to be gainfully employed. It's going to be fantastic. But in those moments of when we're able to see kind of that tide, just that a dark horizon, fantastic. because that means there's a lot of people that are in need of what we have in our way of life, in what Christ has given to us through our relationship with Him, through the church, but also that there's a lot of transformation we can do. There's a lot of raw resource there of humanity that's hurting and wanting and desiring. So the labor is abundant.
It is. And there are millions of us, billions of us across our good earth. And we need, first of all, as you said, this matter of the heart to remember that we're stewards and that God loves us and has given us so much of our life and our breath and our being. It belongs to Him. We just have to return it to Him, return ourselves to Him. And when we do, then we will remember our purpose and the plan that God has given us and the place that we play and the vital role that we have. And then when enough of us do that, we become that platoon, we become that battalion, we become that united front that is able to not only defend against a great enemy, but to, as I love that image of taking the mountain and going on it on our own, because none of us know that path up to the mountain of God, but the church has walked it over and over and over again. So we have these beautiful trail guides along with us, and we can take that mountain together. We can take the mountain of problems in our world together. But it goes back to remembering what it means to be a steward. And that's what Christ has called us to, is to be stewards of our lives and the lives of our brothers and sisters. Well, I want to thank you, Father Dan Swartz, for being here today with us. And I just ask that all of you who are watching this video that you pray for my brother. He's a good friend of mine. He's working with the Marines and the Navy. He's got thousands of soldiers and their souls.
Under. Don't call them soldiers.
Yeah,
they're Marines.
Marines. Yeah. So and sailors, right?
Yep, we got sailors with us too.
Yeah, that are under your stewardship.
Yep.
So pray for him as a steward of God of the souls of these men and women. Pray for me too in this evangelization ministry of drawing all of us through the grace of Jesus Christ back to what it means to be a Christian. Until next time, friends, God bless you.